Hello, everyone, and thanks for coming back to the Phantom Industries YouTube page. Today, we're going to go over the servo configuration page. What this does is adjust your servo to react different ways. So here we are. We're inside the Phantom app. We're on the home page. On the bottom right, you go to Configure. Okay, inside here, first and foremost, you have configuration presets at the very top. Go ahead and press on that button. Takes you into factory default settings. So if you're inside your configuration page and you're messing around and you get yourself in trouble because you tried to do a custom configuration, you can always come back here to your factory setting 1 or factory setting 2. In this current situation, we have factory setting 1 selected. One says faster, one says slower as your factory defaults. What that's referring to is how fast the throttle comes up and locks into a speed. So if you want to slowly come up or your motor's oscillating, you can go to the slower setting, but I recommend you start out on a faster setting, especially if it's rough out, big waves, high wind, or current. I would say start out on the faster setting, and then once you're rolling, you can move to the slower setting. It will stop your motor from oscillating. And as you can see, the settings here in the faster is 15, 12, and 0. The slower setting is 5, 4, and 0. So it will all be in these numerical orders. So KP will always be higher than KI. KI will always be higher than KD. Okay? You can change these to maybe 16, 13, and 1. You don't need to make giant moves. You don't want to put 50, 10, and 0. The motor will go wild. It'll be surging and stuff like that, unless you're trying to catch fish and operate like that. But that's why we added a custom configuration button on the bottom. So up in the top right corner, it has a question mark. That's the help page. So you can go in there, read the help page, learn about how this system works. On the bottom of the page, add custom. So here you can come into the system and you can name your own configuration. So I recommend going out when it's decent outside and test with this, and you can play with it. There's hundreds and hundreds of different settings you can mess with. So we're going to name this test, and we're going to go down to KP. Okay. So what KP is basically how strong the system reacts between your set point and your actual speed. So if you have a real low KP, it'll take a long time to get up to your set GPS speed. Okay. If you have too high a KP, it'll overshoot that set point. So you hit run and all of a sudden, boom, almost throw you out of the boat. You got to be careful. So you want this number to be a value where the motor comes up nice and slow and grabs your set point that you're desiring and stays there, okay? So a higher KP is faster, more aggressive response. Throttle jumps up. If it's too high, it'll overshoot your set speeds and the motor will oscillate real bad. Surging back and forth past the target. If the setting's too low, it'll be a sluggish response and it'll take forever to reach the desired speed. Start with a moderate value, increase it gradually until it responds quickly without bouncing around. Okay? Let's move on to KI. So in this situation, I guess we'll put 14 here. We'll go to KI. Okay, KI. This looks at past errors that have built up over time and adds a correction to eliminate steady state offset. When the boat never quite reaches the exact target speed, so if your set point is 2.0 and it'll eventually get to 2.0, but it takes a long time. It's bouncing around that 1.8, 1.9. You can come in here, and if your setting was 6, let's say, if you're barely missing your set point, you can come in here and go 7. And it'll hold it right on your set point. Okay? The factory defaults are very good at getting you right on the money. We've spent a lot of time doing those. So, again, this is just for playing with it if you want to jerk baits or surge your motor when you're pulling plugs or crankbaits or whatever you might be doing. So, okay. So the higher the KI, the better at removing the lingering error. Eventually it hits the exact speed. If this setting on KI is too low, it'll wind up, throttle will swing too far before settling in where it needs to be. Okay? If the setting is too low, you'll see small permanent errors remain where it'll never really reach the speed that you're shooting for. Okay, moving on to KD, the derivative. This basically can look forward and predict the future by seeing how fast error is changing in your servo movements, and it'll apply like a braking effect to smooth things out. So if it sees it's going to overshoot, it'll brake real hard, okay? The higher this number is, the faster it slows it down. So you need to start with KP first, let it settle out, then do KI, and then adjust your KD, okay? Higher KD dampens overshoot and reduces bouncing, making your throttle responses smoother. Okay, if this is too high, the throttle will twitch unnecessarily and you'll hear the motor surge real fast. Okay, if it's too low, it lets the system oscillate. The motor will start surging. Okay, so this is a fine-tune setting here, real fine-tune. That's why in most of our defaults we leave it at 0. If you ever want to do something, you're not going to be much more over the setting of 2 or 3 or 4, maybe 5 at the very most. Okay, so these values can be adjusted. There's hundreds and hundreds of values you can put in, and then once you put your values in, you hit Save Configuration. Now Test is in your configuration. So if you find a setting where you're pulling crankbaits and it's surging the motor the way you want to, and you happen to be catching fish that way, you can save it in your configuration. If you don't want it anymore, the 3 buttons where it says Test, the 3 dots on the right, you click on that, you can edit that configuration, or you can delete it. Okay, quick tuning tips on this page. Always start with low values or the defaults in the app. Number 2, increase KP first until it responds quickly. Number 3, add KI to eliminate steady state error. Number 4, use KD to smooth out any overshooting. And then feel free to test at different speeds and loads. Small changes go a long way. So if you don't see change and you go from the setting of 15 kp to 25, that's a big change. So make small moves, see what happens, move on to the next move. So go out when you have time to mess with this and take your time and play with some settings. You might find something that works really well for you. And like I said, there's hundreds and hundreds of settings in here. You just have to take the time to make them. The factory defaults are good for 99.9% of all people, but if you want to do some fancy stuff, it's right here in the palm of your hand. Thank you and have a great day.